Okay, so we're talking about the runner and the agent UX, and we have Maria here, who is a senior product designer, and Rayana, who's a staff product designer, on the runner team, right?
Yes, that's right. I'm currently covering for runner and for testing.
Cool.
Teams.
Cool. I'm Thong. I'm an engineer on the configure team. So in terms, I was just talking about what the differences are between runner and agent. And the first thing is that they are two completely distinct processes. And we're still working out which places make sense to connect and which places does not make sense to connect. And currently, the primary use case of the agent is to deploy a Kubernetes manifest files to the Kubernetes cluster. That's the primary use case. Versus the runner is can be used to run anything, right? So if you think about it, the agent is sitting at the very end of the whole DevOps process, which is deploy.
So, if I understand correctly, when you say the agent is at the end of the process. So it's more like on the.
Sorry, it's at the end of DevOps process.
Yeah.
It doesn't wait for runner to run or anything like that. It currently doesn't. It just sees there's a new commit in GitLab or in the repository, and then it deploys. We don't wait for it. That's because our current use case is that there's not many CI jobs that we can think of for Kubernetes processes right now.
Okay, I'm gonna save my questions for later because sorry for interrupting.
No,
I thought I answered this, but go ahead.
Yeah, go for it. So the other kind of UX thing that we're kind of aiming to achieve is what do you call this? IAC, which is sorry, code as configuration. Configuration as code. What's the term for it? Remember, Maria? My brain's melted.
Infrastructure as code?
Infrastructure as code, that's right. All right, it's too late in the day. IAC, yeah, infrastructure as code. So where we try to kind of encourage, or we try to adopt GitOps, where, how do I put it this way? Where we try and help the users commit the repos, and then everything happens from a Git repo, basically. So that's the other kind of UX or DX paradigm. I don't know which is accurate in that sense. So there are a lot of kind of YAML files in this case, which I'm not really super in love with right now. And I think if we think that there's a better kind of way of designing things, I'm happy to hear it. Yeah, so there's a doc that we can look. I'm not sure if you looked at the docs yet. Try to link to the doc. The user docs is there. So in theory, it should take about half an hour to go through the docs and kind of run through it and understand what's going on. But the issue is that we're still working on rolling out it to GitLab.com. So the server component is not there yet for easy testing. If you want to roll out your own server as an install your own GitLab instance, you can, but that's not the canonical experience for a developer or an operator.
So, sorry to interrupt.
No. I think that's it. I don't know. Have I covered everything, Maria?
I think, well, there are the complexities of how the agent works. with the manifests and its configuration, the YAML setup you mentioned?
Yeah, so currently we have multiple YAML files to configure, one per agent, basically. So, and the other thing that we're trying to do is that we're trying to be flexible. We're trying to have the ability to configure the agent for kind of cross-project settings, where the idea is that there's like an application project, and then the application project will trigger a cross-project pipeline to the manifest projects, which contains all the Kubernetes manifest resources. And also we're trying to cater for the other scenario where everything's in one repo, which is definitely simpler, but it's less has less separation of permissions or duties, because the stereotypical teams is that kind of SRE team will work on this project and they'll have their own permission structure and access to the cluster, and then the development team would have another project with the app, right? And they are not allowed to deploy anything. And currently GitLab is just not set up for those two teams mixing together all in one project.
So Thong, I'm kind of trying to wrap my head around what you said in the beginning, the distinction between runners and agents, right? And when you say they are two separate entities, and the way I understand, I have very basic knowledge so far of runners, that runner happens at the beginning, right? Runner happens on the fact that you need that runner agent to configure a pipeline to run your jobs.
Yep.
And what you told me, if I understood correctly, is that the agent in a way happens at the end, let's say at the CD part, when I'm deploying things to my Kubernetes cluster and I want to make all these connections that you talked about. So in talking about the user flow, talking about like the people that actually care about runners and the people that care about configuring agents, and maybe Maria, you can jump into this as well. Are these two separate personas? Or is this still the DevOps engineer that, just needs to do one step, work on one step further on the workflow to configure both runner and agents in the project? I know it's a long question. So
it depends. It depends on how they do deployment, how that org would do deployment, right? Most orgs, I believe, have a kind of a SRE team or operations team that would set up deployments, right? It's not developers, right? So I imagine that it will be two separate personas. There'll be the operator team or the SRE persona that sets up these deployments. Yes, they'll have to deal with agents, and yes, they'll have to deal with runners, because they might have their own runners to link to the Kubernetes files or whatever, right? They'll have that. And then they will have some sort of runner to consume the container images that was built by the application team, the developers. So there are two personas, I think, SREs and developers, and hence there are two projects, possibly.
Are the developers setting up pipelines? Because in my mind, the runner would be maybe used by the same person who sets up the pipelines for a project, or not? Am I mistaken?
Yeah, I think it depends on how the teams are structured, right? It can be whatever, DevOps engineer, it can be a SRE managers that are for runners, for example, that these people that are responsible for managing groups. So you go like a higher level. But I think if I understood correctly, for runner, for example, this is more like on an enterprise level, right? When you have GitLab admin instance and you have a more broken down hierarchy for these responsibilities.
Yeah.
I think that's that's where the second persona, the SRE versus DevOps engineer, appear.
Yeah, we have this distinction as well in GitLab. There's the development team which operates in the GitLab project, and then there is a separate project that the SRE team operates in called deploy or something, and that's used to deploy GitLab their project into GitLab.com.
Okay.
But for smaller teams, it could just be all one person. I mean, one real physical person, but maybe they're taking on two different personas in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
And you said that the runner can run anything. Maybe it would be worth discussing the job to be done here. Well, there are many, but high level, maybe. As a user, I want to use the GitLab runner. Oh, I want to.
For as a user, I want to use the runner for what? I guess the first, like if we look at the DevOps things, as a user, I want to use the runner to build my container, because that's the first one. Cloud native. Let's assume we're cloud native. That's kind of the first job. And then as a user, I want to use runner to run my tests.
I remember you said that the runner
yes.
can be installed in the cluster also. So
Yes.
and in this case, it would be the same as the agent. And that's why I'm
right.
confused.
Yes.
On top of the runner.
Yes.
To solve the firewall or.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, a legit job is that as a user, I want the runner to deploy my code. That is very legitimate.
Job is the same for both the agent and the runner.
Yes. Yes. But for the agent, it's specific to Kubernetes cluster. Like, I cannot use agent to deploy to something that's not a Kubernetes cluster.
So if you were a user coming to GitLab Thong, sorry, Rayana, do you have any questions?
No. I'm just processing information.
Okay, Thong. So you have you're using GitLab.com, and you are an SRE, and let's say you take care, you're a DevOps engineer SRE. You're the combination of ops personas.
Right.
So you're the only person who takes care of the infrastructure and deployments. That's my scenario.
Mm-hmm.
You're one man team.
Uh-huh.
And you see, and you want to enable your developers, deploy to cluster.
Mm-hmm.
And you see the runner and you see the agent. What would you expect to see in order to help you understand what you need to use or the differences between them? Or how would you expect these to work together maybe also?
Like if I was coming in like not as a developer, I expect to just have one tool. I'll kind of question why there are two tools.
I agree. And that's the confusing part for me. Why do we have two tools? How can we?
That's because the primary use case is deploying, but we were hoping to enable extra things after deploying as well. So the sell is that now that you use the agent to deploy, would you like some monitoring of what you just deployed? We'll set it up for you. And we'll just link it up. And then now that you set up monitoring, would you like some alerts? Please set up some thresholds so that we can add alerts to you within GitLab. And now you have some deployments. Would you like us to set up some security scans of your network policies? So it's those extra upsells that we think runner is probably not. It's probably overloading runner if we get runner to do all those things.
Okay, so we need to make it clear that the agent is specifically for Kubernetes clusters.
Yes.
And while the runner could be for any sort of infrastructure, could run your jobs on any infrastructure.
Yeah. We good to have a name for it rather than calling it agent. Right.
Yeah, I told Victor that we call the runner agent in the docs because you said that, and this is gonna be super confusing.
Right.
Could we group them into? But no, because one is for Kubernetes, the other one would be for everything. But I was thinking, could we group them in one place and say choose this for that and choose the runner for that?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
Makes sense because the runner at the moment is in the settings, so it's completely not in the hierarchy of any GitLab entity.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Then both can be connected to your CI/CD, correct? Well, after we do the reverse tunnel for the agent, you can use both.
It still needs a run. So I would say that the tunnel idea is like a downsell thing. Yes, the tunnel idea is like a preview. It's like a kind of a teaser thing for possibly core. I feel, in that I'm not a super enterprise thing. I don't want to set up load balancers and network gateways and things like that. I just want my deploy to work securely from GitLab.com to my cluster, right? Oh yeah, the other thing, Rayana, is that currently the agent is premium only. It's not great for adoption, so we're thinking of some features that can be used by core as well.
Can you repeat that, Tom? Just to understand correctly. You say
the agent is currently a premium only, GitLab premium only feature, and we're thinking of ways to add some core features, because right now the adoption is not that great. Well, it's really new, but we want to increase adoption, so having core users is one way to do that.
Okay. So that's, I think it goes to the challenges, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
If I have a runner installed and it deploys to my cluster, I currently have to provide the variables to my cluster, right? Open the security or not to my cluster.
It depends on how you have your runner set up. If you have your runner set up outside your cluster, then yes, you have to provide some way of authenticating to your cluster.
So when I'm setting up my runner, would it make sense to also create an agent and link my runner to the agent so that I don't have this security issue? So would it make sense in the runner journey to introduce the agent? That's what I'm happening for Kubernetes clusters. But how do we know then that you're deploying to Kubernetes cluster?
I think if you want that feature, you can do it by installing the runner into your cluster, and then give it the appropriate service account to run as. I was trying this out the other day, and it's definitely possible to do that. It's just that you have to install the runner into your cluster, and then you have to disable shared runners, shared GitLab.com runners. And then, sorry?
Do that in GitLab or in your Kubernetes platform? Install the runner.
Install runner into your Kubernetes cluster.
So you connect
in the Kubernetes platform, yeah. So specifically we install the Kubernetes executor, and then I'll try and find the docs for that. I was just messing with it. Yeah. And then you can set your own specific service account to run this, right? But it's pretty fixed. You can only run as one service account. So if you want to run as another service account, you have to install another runner, basically. Which is doable. Like, it depends on your specific needs and what you're trying, how flexible you want to be and how secure you want to be, right? So I feel like that's definitely an option for people who want that. The sell that we want to give for agents is that you don't have to do all of that. We'll handle this for you, for your agent. That's what the agent does. And because it's a Kubernetes cluster, it's a standard thing, we can take care of a lot of this for you.
Because it's one, sorry. It is one. We can take care of all of this for you because it is one.
Because the agent knows about Kubernetes.
I think we need to do the user journeys, Rayana.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is a hypothesis right now, that the agent can take care of all of this for you. But it's probably not an ideal experience if you still have to set up a pipeline, and then you still have to install a runner, and then you still have to install the agent, right? If I'm coming in as an engineer in large company, for example, and then I read the document that says, I have a Kubernetes cluster, just install the agent, and you can, it will take care of everything for you. Great, that sounds great to me. I have a Kubernetes cluster. I come from a large organization. I do not want to expose my Kubernetes cluster so that I can install it the old way, right? Which is the push-based model. So I installed it, but then I find out that it doesn't do everything that I need. For example, it doesn't run CI because I want to run some custom processes. Then I think that could be an issue. So I think that hypothesis needs to be validated, that actually works.
So is that because we don't have the features yet that you need, or that the agent doesn't run the CI job?
The agent, I think we don't have a smooth integration between agent and CI. In fact, we have no integration. That's.
We're working on it soon. Sorry? We're working on it soon.
We don't know whether we need to work on it or not. Is the kind of rather blunt assessment. I have a hunch that we do, because there's no way that people just deploy things. People need to do other jobs before deploy, right? So
Maybe we can come up with a perfect user journey, which might not be realistic with what we have, but so I want to do CI/CD, for example. I create my project. I don't know how my CI/CD pipelines configuration fit into the agent manifest. So the manifest contains a list of projects, that's for Rayana, that the agent tracks if they have been updated, and it checks in periodically. And when there are changes, it auto deploys the changes, I think, to the cluster. Is that correct, Thong?
yes. Yeah.
The
So
manifest contains CI configuration. The projects in the manifest can contain pipelines, right?
yes, you can. Yeah.
And when the agent auto deploys the manifests, do the pipelines always run for each update?
Yes, for each commit. New commit.
So what's the sequence of events? The developer that updates the code in the manifest.
Sorry?
There is a developer who writes code in the manifest project.
It starts from the beginning. Let's just say I have a Java project, and I have pipelines already to build and test, right? So I make a change to the home page to change the color from red to blue, something like that. And then my CI pipeline runs. It will build a container on test passes, and then it will build the final container. Then that final container gets passed on to the manifest project as a as a kind of a container v1.1, because it was previously container v1.0, for example. So now the manifest project gets updated with a new commit changing from v1.0 to 1.1. Then the agent comes in and detects a new commit and deploys the update of that manifest project.
And that's it?
Yep.
Yeah. So it really sounds like, okay, the difference is that you're not necessarily using the runner, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You still need to use the runner for steps 2A to D.
Yeah.
But then step 3, you have the choice of using the runner or using the agent.
Yeah.
To achieve the same outcome.
Yeah. You still need runners to set up, well, CI, because you need to write the jobs, you need to write everything, right? Then pass everything related to runner here. And then
Yes.
when you want to specifically deploy to your Kubernetes cluster, the whole shebang, then it's where we go to the next step. I think that's where Maria talked about making the clear differentiation, but also saying this is another step you can take in the process if you're deploying.
Yep. Yep. That is accurate. So that's all kind of a one user journey. I don't know whether I can describe it as a perfect user journey. A quick validation is to put these steps in front of a real customer and see whether they like it or not. That's one thing. And then the second thing is to kind of think of whether we can make that flow smoother or not. Because right now there's 2 projects involved here.
Yeah. And also, I think I added a comment here that I'm seeing us getting to this enterprise management bubble, and there are conversations. I'm sure how it works for configure. I'm no Kubernetes expert, but we are talking about like how to manage clusters and how to have like a high level view for the admins and for the SREs about everything that's going on with our clusters. Oh, sorry, with the runners. So maybe this is also another thing, you know, that we can discuss further. How if they are in a way part of a single user flow, if they could be, how do they connect at the higher level, at that admin level, at the for these enterprise customers, right? Because you say which tier would this fall
Premium,
into?
yeah, premium.
Yeah, premium. So it's the same people are paying for it.
Mm. Yeah.
Folio.
Let's use auto DevOps. The discussion we had for auto DevOps to to do the whole flow in a wizard way. And auto DevOps running behind the scenes with the agent and the runner.
The happy path.
I'm not sure that that's possible.
Yeah. After that, it's just different RAM. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I was telling Nicholas that Auto DevOps is like all things to all people. So
Yep.
you can tell me what Auto DevOps is then, sure. But yeah, so those are that's like, you know, there's the higher level flow, which is the kind of a summary flow, and also the kind of the control flow for maybe like SREs. They want to know if there's any issues or anything like that after things have been deployed, or a health dashboard flow, for example. So all those happens afterwards, which neither the agent nor the runner handles pretty well. So the opportunities there potentially. Sure.
So the after deployment stuff, which was handled by the APM team.
Yeah, like the APN team, the secure team, the protect team. Currently, those things require a lot of setup.
Hello?
A lot of setup,
Okay.
and they're not. They're integrated using GitLab CI. We're using GitLab templates, but it's not necessarily the flow that I think is the best flow for a lot of reasons. One of the reasons is that the maintenance on those CI templates is pretty high, and it's very inflexible. That's probably my opinion partly. I'm sure it works for a lot of people.
These steps could be improved by using the agent?
No.
But
Yeah, it could. But the agent can sort of like automatically set up things or something like that. That's kind of the vision. But we're thinking even bigger in that the agent can automatically set up things and push things to a generic API that is not Kubernetes specific. And in the future, anyone can set up their own automation to push those same things to the same generic API. So for example, we have a deployments API already. So GitLab can just keep track of deployments using that same API, and then we just have like different agents. So we can have Kubernetes agents, we can have EC2 agents, or plugins or whatever, and they all communicate back to GitLab using the same API. So that's how GitLab will know there are deployments that's been on these different targets.
Mm.
And then repeat the same thing for monitoring, with alerts, that kind of thing.
So out of the box experience.
As far as you can, it's not going to be perfect, but because it's an API driven thing, then people can still modify it somewhat. People can still customize it somewhat.
I see.
Or write their own. That's the first step. The other thing is that it's still very small because we're limiting ourselves to only Kubernetes clusters.
Mm.
So this is something that Victor is trying to find out whether is that a big enough market or not to do that, or whether we need to solve this whole issue of automatically set up out-of-box experience for monitoring and so on in a better way. Because if you only solve the out-of-box experience for Kubernetes clusters, sure, it's a win, but it might be a very small win, or might be great, but we don't know.
Yeah. We're betting on the adoption of Kubernetes, basically.
Yes.
Keep increasing, but we don't know.
That's right.
But according to, well, at least a few people I've spoken to, they use more VMs. Some still use on-prem. Basically, I think now is the time that people have migrated or are still migrating from on-prem to the cloud solution. But what I'm hearing is most people still use VMs, and fewer people use Kubernetes because there is a lack of expertise.
Yeah, it's really hard to get right. Yeah. Some people move from kind of on-prem to kind of serverless Lambda type things.
Which we're not investing on for now.
No, not currently.
And also organizations like telecom, banks, they will always have on-prem. Maybe they have their own Kubernetes solutions, but on their on-prem infrastructure, right? Because of security.
Yeah, we are. I think I kind of agree. I think that most of those large enterprises will standardize on Kubernetes as a way to shift away from very traditional on-prem. They might have on-prem Kubernetes clusters, it's fine, but it becomes a standard, right?
You mean each of these organizations will have a standard way of setting up their infrastructure with Kubernetes, for example?
No, it becomes a standard way for them to set up a platform for their developers to deploy code to, versus setting up a custom thing for VMs every single time they want to do that. They don't need to do that. There's Kubernetes to orchestrate all those things.
If you had an advice, I know that Google has a lot of articles for their infrastructure setup out there. Would that be an infrastructure that is an example of a standardization, for example, if we were to read for infrastructure setups? Well, according to your opinion.
I think it's kind of size dependent. So if you have only under 50 developers, which equates to about maybe 4 teams of developers, it's not worth it to set up Kubernetes, probably, because it's probably cheaper to set up your own set of VMs, and you can customize it. You can get all the benefits of customized flexibility without having to kind of standardize, right? But at some point beyond a range, having the benefits of a standardized thing to deploy to, which is Kubernetes, gets its own benefits, because beyond that size, beyond 100 developers, you have the budget to employ 2 to 3 people to take care of your Kubernetes clusters. And then your developers don't have to wait for VMs to be provisioned anymore. Kubernetes does that for you.
I see. Okay.
So
Rayana, is it framed there?
I'm like looking at the documentation pages while you discuss to see how I can link this to my reality. Kind of a sidebar, and I think we already passed this, but can you explain again, how do you install the agent to your cluster?
Yep. So this stage is which link? Install the agent into the cluster. So it's basically kubectl apply is how we install the Kubernetes, the agent into the cluster. And this link. Yeah. Have you used kubectl apply before? Rayana?
Unmuted, sorry, no.
Oh, okay, yeah, no, I wasn't sure what your familiarity with Kubernetes is. Yeah, but it's basically just apply these files, which has different resources to it.
There is a video actually.
Yeah. Well, it's basically take a file and decide on a name for it, have the token, and point to the right GitLab instance, and then hit apply, and then it's installed.
Okay.
So that's one YAML file. And then we need to configure the manifest project to configure what you need to deploy, what you want to deploy. And that part, I'm really the manifest, create a manifest YAML part. No, not that one. Define a configuration repository. This part needs to be streamlined.
The define configuration repo, this one.
It doesn't have the experience of one single .gitlab CR YAML file for running, for example. This one we need to set up. We need to know the name of the agent, and then we need to set up a folder for each agent. If I only have one agent, then it's a lot of work, and then I have to set up the name of the ID, and then which manifest project to point to. But if I want to just use this project that I'm deploying to, and I'm not setting a cross project, it's again redundant from my point of view. You know, from the point of view of a single project administrator. So perhaps those things could be simplified. I don't know what you think, Maria.
I created a UI where you can follow the steps for installing the agent. But recently, Victor said that the API experience is so easy that we're not planning to introduce a UI for installing the agent. quite frustrating. I'm trying to find a video from Victor who explained. So I posted the solution architect video, which is 14 minutes, I think, quite short, but I think it's a bit different to the one Victor shared with me. But yeah, I think it can be. Well, I don't know the Kubernetes commands. That's my problem because you use Kubernetes specific commands, right? Not GitLab commands for the installation.
Mhm.
You use both.
Yeah.
But you also have the configuration file where you define some stuff.
Yeah.
So the only alert was for the 2 agents. So we don't show you where the GitLab agent is to connect to your cluster agent. So one thing I propose would just surface the address of the GitLab agent. So when you install the cluster agent, it's easy to
Yes.
find.
Yes. Yes. I've been talking about that with Joao, and I was like, yeah, in I think that's the exact same idea that we've been talking about as well. We should say that, and we should also say whether the server part is enabled or not. If it's not enabled, then
Yeah, so I think there is complexity that we take for granted that users understand, but I'm not really sure they will.
yeah, it is a lot of steps still. So
If I can suggest something, since you already have this in the application, right? You have a problem you can validate. I would do a maturity scorecard validation, Maria, because then you can choose just one scenario and then just see how people configure this. Like, for example, we did for secrets management, and yeah, everything's there, and the expectation is that you have your vault configuration you can just bring to GitLab. People could not complete that,
right.
1 hour, and then someone is still learning how to configure, going through the docs. So if you already know or have the assumption that you can streamline this process, I would suggest doing a maturity scorecard, because then you can really see how people configure and maybe get some information on how, I don't know, how you can identify the low-hanging fruits for the UI for next steps.
Yeah.
So
That's good.
you mean just for the installation and maturity scorecard, or a UX scorecard, I guess, because they told us not to do maturity.
I would do a maturity scorecard, because what is this now? Viable? How
We
you call
just introduced it, so I don't know.
Yeah, so
Minimal?
it's maturity minimal, eh? Yeah. So you can validate if it's viable because it's already in the product, so people should use it. And if they're using, how can you improve this experience? And that's all about the maturity scorecard is just fine. Choosing one scenario. Yeah.
Start. Like, can people install it easily, or will they give up halfway through?
Yeah, and that's what we wanted to validate for secrets management. Can people use the documentation and install it? That's it.
Yep.
Just observe them. That, I think that's the for these configurations where we assume, yeah, it's there, people can just figure out. It's super painful, and GitLab docs are super complex. So if you're not, that Victor might not invest in UI right now, and from engineer point of view, you can improve this this flow, improve the configuration. Yeah, I'll suggest looking into this framework.
Yeah, I think the we don't necessarily have to have a UI, but like, because the UI might even increase the number of steps, right? I think the number of steps is already quite high, so that's and the complexity of understanding is quite high as well. So I think those are valid points to consider without looking at the solution first.
Yeah, the second video is where Victor explains things that he installs, etc. Yeah, I think it's definitely worth doing a CMS. Well, even if it's minimal, we're gonna prove that it's below minimal.
Yeah, but you can figure out the pain points, right? And then, like what you're saying, define the jobs to be done. You have the job is to make configuration easy, or to whatever, do everything in one YAML file, and not necessarily do UI, because if you cannot configure like seamlessly from the API,
then you have no option basically.
yeah, exactly.
There's no alternative.
Just play your tap.
Mhm.
I think we have a lot of work to do, Rayana.
You think? Cancel Christmas.
Christmas, New Year, 2021.
Need to
No,
take
but
a
it's
flight
gonna
back.
be. Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of work. Yeah, I'm not quite sure where the work is right now. I mean,
I'm
I could
starting to,
just change all of this. I don't want to. I won't.
at least we can polish on the user side. So that's what I always say to developers, because you have built it in a specific way, so you know how it works, and you feel, most developers feel they should be truthful to the user with the way that the thing is built. But you can lie pretty easily in the UI. You can hide some of the complexity.
Mhm.
Um,
Yep.
or reshuffle the way things are done, but you can improve the experience without changing the code base, basically.
Yeah. And I think we probably should shift focus instead of like presenting the default experience as cross-project experience. We should present the default experience as a single project that hides a lot of the complexities.
Yeah, and then figure out whether the additional complexity is needed, and if it's needed, find a usable way to do it.
Yeah, or we can have a data-driven approach where you keep the complex thing, and then you see over time, it's like, oh, literally no one is using the cross project or the complex part. It's like, do we even want it, right? Because then we can have the hypothesis. It's already built, so might as well just keep it. But as I say, shuffle things around to present a different experience, and then yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. The thing that I'm still not sure about is like those extra steps and after we deploy. So maybe it'd be worth reaching out to the product designer for Monitor or Secure to figure out how these parts can connect. Unless you already have, or you have an idea.
I don't yet, because I'm not sure what their user flows are. I would need, or what they should be. Is it through a YAML file? Is it gonna be, how do you set up, like after you set a agent configuration?
At this point, it has to be through the YAML file, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Or do you,
otherwise it'd be a really bad experience. Like, I'm using the agent, but in order to use the agent, you need to go to the YAML file for deploy, go to some other place for Monitor. Why?
yeah. Again, it's linking. That's the problem with the agent. You link it. So you link to the manifest, you link it to its own configuration. If you need to link it also to a different YAML, well, maybe that's also, you have a different YAML for security stuff and you add it to the agent configuration, not configuration, manifest. I don't know. But this
Like,
linking is very unintuitive.
It'd be nice if we can just have a agent.yaml file or something like that at the minimum. Then we can just configure everything from one file at least. Even though it's not UI, but maybe that's the solution. I don't know.
Yeah, that needs the collaboration of all the teams agreeing to work on one thing all together, which would be great.
Mhm. Yep. Yep. So some of the engineers from the Protect team have started collaborating with us on that. But we're still talking about lower level stuff. We haven't got to that part yet about configuration. So it'd be great to kind of figure out what the UX is going to be,
Can I ask
or
you,
what what the jobs are. Yeah. Sorry. Yes. Go ahead.
do you have a cross engineering meetings? Out of curiosity, with other teams, with other ops teams?
No.
Hmm.
Only. Yeah.
Might be useful to start. I don't know. We have the big think, which is pretty useful for PMs and designers to discuss these things.
Mm. Yeah. Could be. At one point I was contemplating, but it's really, really hard to predict what groups align at point of time. So most of the time, groups don't have much alignment.
Overlap.
Yeah,
Alignment.
because if you're not working on the same features at the same time, they don't match. Then you don't have overlap. But if you do, then we do ad hoc. So
I see.
yeah.
And then the overlapping is coming from the PMs rather than the engineering. So
Yes. So the PMs need to organize and then ideally, hopefully, the designers have some overlap as well, and then the engineers figure that one out. Which is not ideal sometimes, because then we end up with something like auto DevOps, where each engineering team has slightly different interpretations. So trying to pull that back a little bit right now with auto DevOps and present kind of a unified vision of like, this is the pattern that you should follow, for example. But that could be useful if we know ahead of time.
I was just curious. I posted Kenny's vision, in case you haven't seen it.
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Okay, we're way over time, but that was expected, I think.
Yeah, our wonder ones generally go over time a little bit. Yeah, so are there any next steps that we are clear on, or any unclear things?
Well, we have 5 comments. Make clear the agent is specific for Kubernetes and runner can be any type of infrastructure. Name the agent properly. Communicate, well, that was mine, communicate in the docs. Communicate in the docs which one you can choose and use depending on the use case. And I put a subnote, look at the docs and see how understandable and usable they are. And for me, to do a category maturity card, scorecard, UX scorecard for the agent installation experience.
Adding here, I still would like to do like a user journey, maybe a brainstorm sesh or something with you, Maria. I think it will be beneficial to both of us. So we can do like from runner to agent. What would that look like?
Yeah. So all the steps that we have described above, I would like us to go through GitLab and see, that would be a UX scorecard type of thing, and evaluate the user journey, and maybe then try to figure out, well, see how you can do it now, if you can do it. And if you can't, maybe work on a vision on how you would be able to do it.
Yeah. And for me, I have to understand runners.
I'm gonna come to the to Amsterdam next year so we can do it in person.
These are
3-day workshop, like agent runner.
Oh my God. There's a lot of the ICD information in my brain that I just don't know what I'm gonna do with it.
Please dump it on me because I want to learn about CI/CD. Well, in our next.
I'm writing the runner UX page, and a lot of this the information shared here is going to help me kind of try to understand a little bit more the not only the personas but what this thing is. And if I have any questions, I'll ping you or any suggestions. Because I learn a lot from you guys today. So thank you so much.
Thong, because I feel clueless about everything still a year later. But
Oh.
I know some things, but I still need to learn a lot. I'm missing all the CI/CD pipeline the configuration, and but they are all done in a YAML file. So if you cannot write it yourself, then you have to shadow somebody doing it.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
I'm
at some
gonna.
point you got to do it. I mean, SRE teams take years to shift from whatever Jenkins to GitLab YAML. And part of it is like, oh, I don't understand this YAML. So, I mean, yeah. Lots of people are in the same boat. Yeah. But once you can try write some YAML, it's pretty powerful, I must say. Yeah.
I can just follow the steps, I guess, in the documentation and create my own project.
Yeah. So like it's pretty easy. I'll try and link to the example project that I did. This is what I do like most days now. I just create new projects with CI YAML. So it can be as simple as this. This is a project that I did to kind of play with artifacts and dependencies. So I put it in the wrong place.
All right.
I put it in a different place. It's not a decision, sorry. Yeah, I think I had to cut up some time to make a set of projects for agent as well, just so that I understand it as well, and also other people have an example to look at as well. Because right now there's not that many examples out there.
Cool. I wish I didn't have design work for a couple of weeks, and I could spend time like playing around with GitLab. Anyway, that's
Are
not
you fairly booked? Yeah.
Well, I'm designing the agent details page now, so
Right.
you always have something to design. Anyway.
Yep. Okay. Probably way over time, so should probably finish.
Yeah, it's bedtime for you almost.
Yeah. All right. Nice chatting with you, Rayana, and nice chatting with you as well, as always, Mary.
Thank you so much for everything.
And
This
thanks.
is awesome.
Cool. All right.
Have a lovely holiday, and see you after the 2nd of January.
Right. Yes, you too. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. And we'll see you in 2021.
Hopefully COVID-free.
I'm hoping we'll still exist in 2021, but yeah, we'll see.
That's a grim thought. A comet will come and destroy the planet.
Yeah. Yep. That's the 2020 thing. No such thing.
This is a travel too.
Fine. Yeah.
Bye, everyone.